Next up, I want to welcome my good friend, Sridhar Iyengar, who is the CEO of Elemental Machines. And Srid is going to be talking about the pain that we've all experienced if you're in the lab and all of this amazing equipment that we have can't talk to each other. How do we get it to talk to each other? We send it to the cloud, and that's what Elemental Machines does. Please give Srid a big round of applause.
Great. Thank you very much, John. Thanks for being here, and thank you, everyone, for attending our talk. So I want to talk to you about connecting anything and everything to the cloud. So I used to be a scientist, and I had lots and lots and lots of headaches trying to get data off of physical instruments into a computationally accessible format. So when we talk about collecting and connecting all this information, we're really talking not about your scientific data as much as we're talking about the contextual data, meaning under what conditions did you collect your experimental data? So it's one thing to get your data, but it's also another one to know, hey, did the machine that I used, was it calibrated properly? Was my incubator set point correct? What about the ambient temperature and humidity in the lab? What about air quality? For those of you who were based in the Bay Area a couple of years ago, lots of wildfires, and we had lots and lots of difficulty keeping labs clean. And so knowing particulate count and all that. So your experimental data is going to be affected by the context in which that information was collected. And that's what we're trying to automate. We're trying to connect machines and instruments and your environment to the cloud so you have all that contextual information. And so, in other words, what we're trying to do is to have a world where there's less of this and more of things like this. Imagine you go open your fridge or freezer, you get your reagent, and all of a sudden, you scan the barcode, and all of a sudden you get a notification saying, well, hang on a second, don't use that, it may be damaged. Now, you're not going to get this in real time unless you have everything in the cloud and unless you're actually getting that data in real time and being able to act upon that. And having it written down in a spreadsheet, typed in a spreadsheet or written down on paper, you're not going to get a world like this. Or something that I suffered through, you go into a lab and you got 3, 4, 5 of the same machine. One of those is going to be used a lot more than the other one, maybe the one that's closest to the door or furthest from the door. And reproducibility of science really depends on your equipment and your maintenance. So just being able to know that, hey, this machine was used a lot more than the one next to it, and maybe you should schedule preventative maintenance. All of this, the operational side of the contextual side of the kind of data you're getting off your machines is critical for the reproducibility and critical for the quality of your results. And so the problem that we're tackling is not so much the information we want to get out of the big machines and the big instruments are connected to PCs, but the hundreds of millions of small machines and small assets like balances, pH meters, thermocyclers, and things like this, which are not actually connected to anything. And so that's where transcription errors happen. That's where mistakes happen, and that's where you're not getting all that data in the right context. So, our sort of view on this is, the current state of the connected lab is, everything eventually goes through Microsoft Excel before it goes into some repository. And what we're envisioning is a world where everything gets automatically pulled and connected through an IoT platform. So for those of you who aren't aware, IoT is Internet of Things. It's basically machines talking to machines. So we can connect to small machines, small assets, and basically connect things to the cloud and pull that data and have that available in a computationally accessible format so that when you do your results, when you get your results and your scientists, your data scientists look at everything, they can look back and say, wait a minute, that didn't look right. What happened there? Now you can go back and you can actually see the context in which data was collected. So when we talk about contextual data and how it can be used to answer questions, it's things like, was your lab at the right temperature? Well, it's pretty straightforward. If you're doing a run, you go home for the weekend and blah, blah, blah. Was everything maintained properly? Or another example, were your reagents stored correctly? The number of times that I've heard, well, myself, my colleagues, and folks we work with, kind of come back and say, wait a minute, that experiment didn't work. Oh, it wasn't stored correctly. Something was out of range. Your freezer was out of range, or your environment was out of range. And one other thing that is really really hard to track down is, let's say you're growing cells in an incubator and you're running it over the course of a couple of days or a week. You don't want to know if somebody comes in, because these are all shared resources, you don't want to know if somebody comes in and reaches in, opens your incubator and takes something out, puts something in. So wouldn't you want your cells stored in an incubator that never gets opened versus one that gets opened 10, 15, 20 times a day? Well, that's really what we're all about. We're about connecting that information and giving you that context. So anyone have any interesting mysteries that they need solved? We're here to help, and please come talk to us. Thank you.